VeeFam, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the VeeFam Sessions. My name is Mr. Messer, but of course you can call me Rob, and I am thrilled to be here joined by podcast host, registered dietitian, owner of Food is Fuel NYC, VeeFriend, co-founder of VeeDads. Man, your list is long. Guys, Ryan Turner's here. Ryan, how are you? Thank you for being here.
Oh man, I'm just tickled to get on here. So thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So thrilled to have you, and happy to just have a slot of your time. Like I feel like you're everywhere. And all the time when I see you in the feed, whether if it's not a VeeDads episode, it's your beautiful notes you write to your daughter and all of these things, and you just seem to have it like all together, calm, cool, and collected. And you have your hands in so many things, and I feel like this is long overdue to kind of catch up, to not only talk about what you're doing now, but to kind of look back a little bit and to see where you've come from. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, for sure. There's a little bit of is it imposter syndrome? I don't know, but calm, cool, collected. I'm glad it looks that way from the outside.
I know I get that all the time, and in my head I'm just like, it's bananas. But yeah, maybe we'll dive into that. Who knows? Um, so to start, as you may know, I always like to take a step all the way back. If you could just give us the 55-second clip notes on who Ryan Turner is pre VeeFriends, pre hearing the name Gary V.
Oh man, thanks so much. So yeah, I am Ryan Turner from Jersey, lived up and down the East Coast, worked in healthcare consulting for a little bit in DC after college. Decided I saw a lack of support from the nutrition side from the within healthcare, and then decided to go back to school to be a dietitian. And then really a lot of my life is just kind of after that. And then wanted to open my own practice, wanted to work with young athletes, wanted to make sure that I was doing my best that I could to just kind of be part of the solution in the healthcare system. I'm definitely not a dietitian that kind of hates on doctors, but I'm definitely a dietitian that likes to work hand in hand and understands the limitations of both and kind of where we can come together. So I think if that's like kind of my ethos of just wanting to, support everyone that I can and try not to, overplay my hand, you know, every place that I've been in to this point, I got to be honest, I feel like it's come a little bit easy in some kind of ways where, I've kind of wanted to do something. I set myself up. I've put myself in the position to do what I wanted to do within private practice, within the clinical realm, within my own private practice, within sports nutrition, everything. But it's come. And, I think it's all because I've always kind of just put myself out there. I've asked questions. I've wanted to network as best as I really could, and yeah, that brought me to a moment that I guess we can really kind of go after that. I remember sitting in a session with someone. I remember. I remember where. I remember almost the day. I know the year, and there was Gary V's book sitting right next to me. And she saw it and she said, "Oh, do you like that guy?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just learning about him actually." She goes, "Oh yeah, he came and he spoke at our company, and man, what a jackass!" And I was like, "Oh, okay, interesting." So I didn't know how to take that in the moment, but if I had to pinpoint a moment where my life crossed with Gary V, it was then, and it got me really thinking about a few things.
Very interesting. That's a funny. A lot of people have that first knee-jerk reaction to him, but I'm glad you came around and didn't take that for everything. Real quick, and I'm glad you said hand in hand. Chelsea and I, we for the better part of a decade, we were working with a lot of natural solutions, essential oils and things. So we really try to get educated on that. And in that field, a lot of people were the other way, where it's like, doctors never go to school for nutrition. They can't help us in that way. But from you, from the horse's mouth,
Hmm.
why is it that doctors, MDs, as we know it, don't talk enough about nutrition?
Oh man, I mean,
Uh,
loaded question, but I'm not going to overwhelm you with, a whole conversation on it. As much as I will say, doctors don't get paid to dole out nutrition advice. And if you really want to get down into the amount of time they actually have with patients, it's not enough to really get into a good conversation around nutrition and things that you can be proactive about your health with. Now, I think saying that is already starting to kind of pigeonhole some doctors, because some doctors do, and they leave time on their schedule to talk with patients appropriately. But yeah, I mean, most doctors maybe get a semester's worth of nutrition, and I think very generally, and that's not where their wheelhouse is, and that's okay. And I think that if we go into the healthcare realm understanding that, I think we're going to be in a better place instead of blaming. Do I think that there is a lot of bad information? Do I think that doctors could end up doing a lot more? Well, yeah, I do. But, you know, I think that it's on the other side too. You have a lot of dietitians in some cases that are trying to, step out of their lane, and they're trying to now cure something and they can't cure it, right?
Mm,
As a dietitian, we are preventative. I think that we can definitely support a lot of health outcomes, but like, we aren't medicine. Food is not medicine. Medicine is medicine. And if medicine wasn't medicine, then like my wife who went through chemotherapy probably wouldn't be alive right now. So it's something where it's like, nutrition wouldn't have saved my wife. Chemotherapy did. So if we understand kind of where things really should sit, that's good. But if we have doctors that are now being forced into talking about something that they don't know very, very much in, I think we're putting everyone in a bad position.
mm,
So if if doctors can learn a little bit more, and this isn't every doctor, this is just, I would say, the majority. I would say if doctors can learn how to, refer out to a dietitian, it can help that much more. But you get into so many other things there, right? You get into insurance, you get into why not many dietitians want to work clinically anymore because the pay is so horrible.
right.
You want to, so I mean, you can go on and on with this. But what I will say is that
Sure.
we all need to be our best advocate. And if we start pointing fingers instead of trying to find solutions, it's going to put us in a really bad spot. So, not sure if that answers your question exactly, but that's where I would answer it.
I totally get it. And yes, I think I'm not in any position to give anyone advice, but when I am on the subject with someone that's very kind of needs to open their mind and vantage point a little bit, I really push them to seek out a naturopath. Um, because if nothing else for me, it was such an eye-opening experience the first time I went to a naturopath, because it was an hour and a half of
Hmm.
them. Not, it wasn't like 10 minutes, like, okay, here you go. It was really diving into everything: history, habits, sleep habits, eating habits, um, and like really diving in. And if nothing else, even, if no solutions worked, it just opened my mind to ask questions and to be an advocate for myself, ask the right questions, and really research and like think about things differently, which I think would be a valuable experience for most people. um,
Oh, 100%.
so you hit the nail right on the head. Just people need to be the advocate for themselves and not take anybody for 100% advice. Like, you gotta look out for you. But thank you for that. I had to double click on something there, or else I would have been upset at myself later. So
No.
you, just to for clarity, food is fuel. Is that's your brand with your practice and your podcast, all your media under it?
Yeah,
That's
Food
your
is
whole
Fuel
thing.
NYC is my own private practice that I opened in 2019. I think really LLC started then, and have been taking clients under there for a while now. But I also work in tandem with some of the boutique gyms in the city. So, in particular, people are familiar. There's Tone House, there's Dog Pound, that I am helping develop their nutrition program right now, which is really exciting. So, I'm able to see, I would say, more clinically based clients through my own practice. I still specialize in sports nutrition. When I'm working with the boutique facilities, it is a lot more aesthetic based, body fat loss.
Mm,
Um, it's looking at safe supplementation. It does involve a lot of eating disorders. So it involves a lot of eating disorders that maybe people aren't aware of, that are either, maybe some diagnosed, many undiagnosed. And as a dietitian, I can't diagnose, but I can make sure that we're having the conversation, right? I work with very talented, very driven individuals, but people that are so type A in some cases that they'll run through a wall even if they are in the worst state of health. And by that, I mean undernourished, overtrained, women that are, losing their periods, and they don't have a problem with that happening, men that are seeing recurring injuries, people that have been doing the same workouts, year after year and still not seeing progress, but, afraid to change anything. But yeah, there's anorexia, there's orthorexia, a lot of binge eating disorder. So my world sits there. My world with nutrition is very emotional, and so it has to be played, I think, with a lot of empathy. There needs to be a lot of time to listen. There needs to be conversations, routinely to make sure that we are hitting on appropriate topics to be able to kind of get to the root cause of maybe what someone's thinking is or where their actions are coming from.
Interesting. So yeah, there's a lot to that. And congratulations. That sounds like some great alignments with your brand and with those gyms. Some fantastic opportunity. When building the brand, were you always kind of entrepreneurial and wanted to do that, or was it like when you started tapping into Gary and kind of that mentality of building a brand, making content? Is that what really pushed you towards you know creating this and making podcasts and putting out content and all of that?
I started listening to and reading, I would say, Gary 2018. Like that's when that moment was with that client that I had mentioned. So I guess in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that that's that long ago. I really started to get into a lot more of his thinking and the ethos there. I knew it was in 2021. It was when I was at the height of a partnership that I was working with in terms of a strength training program that we had put together. I was in the gym, I was hitting it really hard, and I would put on Gary to pump me up for workouts. And it was right when everything around NFTs was dropping. Web3 was there, and that's where I was getting set up for, I think where I am right now. But a lot of my business mentality has always just been driven from like, I don't like listening to other people. I don't, as in, I don't like to be told what to do. And I've always known that about myself. Like I'm still good within a team, but I don't like someone controlling my destiny, controlling my future. I like to have the ability to, sidestep something if I want to, follow a passion if I need to. And I think even within the VeeFriends world, I've been able to find, I think, a little bit of that too. So it's been really good, and I almost feel like it's like where I was, like who I was innately, and then it kind of came together with someone who was kind of speaking my language that I didn't really know how to put into words.
Mm. When was the first time you remember hearing the word VeeFriends?
The first time it was, I guess it was, I think, yeah, it was definitely before May 2021, because I can tell you all about kind of what happened around that time and why I missed Mint, although I was like deep within all of it. But yeah, I guess like it was right when Gary started to talk about it. I don't remember if it was. I guess it was it a podcast I was listening to. I don't even know anymore what I was listening to, but it was just Gary being pumped into my head and hearing about it, but more like Web3 based, more on the side of like uh, you know, um, familial wealth and getting into crypto and understanding things. And then if I think back, I almost remember him talking more about like MetaMask and kind of what NFTs meant well before he mentioned VeeFriends. So, but that had to been like kind of weeks apart.
Hmm. Got it. So you were well versed by the time it rolled around on May 11th. Um, well, actually, it was this week, 3 years ago. We're recording this on May 6th, 2024. So this was like the bananas week,
Yeah.
3 years ago. So I mean, it sounds like I might rip off a Band-Aid, but it sounds like what happened. You teased it. What happened with missing the mint?
It was absorbing everything he was saying it was wanting to do everything that he was saying, but not making it happen in terms of like getting MetaMask, because everything was just a little bit uh undefined in the moment. And so then I was like, wait, what money is going where? And then what do I put? Like, I don't understand all of this. But it was at that time that I already had ETH in Coinbase. I just didn't know how to get it over to MetaMask. And then it was like whenever I had the moment, I didn't really care. But I kept thinking, I was like, he keeps saying to do this. Okay, I'll do this. So eventually, when I guess however it happened, when everything had to get transferred, I tried to do it like hours before, and then there was that waiting period to kind of
Mm-hmm.
get it all kind of transferred over, and so that I missed everything. But I still didn't even get it. Like, I didn't get Dutch auction. I didn't understand what was going on. So there was a little bit of me like, oh man, I'm really upset that I did miss it, but I don't really understand it right now. But I'm going to keep listening. And then, I think as I kept hearing the next couple days happen, that's kind of where I was like, man, I think I really did miss something. And then that's where the FOMO started. And I threw all of my money into a different project that I was like, no, but this is going to be great because this person was mentioning Gary Vee and what he was going to build and all that kind of stuff. And man, was that a mistake. And I don't want to name anything. It's very well known, and it wouldn't ruin anything. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely hopped on. I definitely followed through late, and that was my issue with it all.
Um, so many parallels to my personal story, especially the throwing money, chasing other projects. Looking back at some of my transactions, I'm like, I can't believe I spent that on that. Um, and I don't have a lot of money to throw around. It was just like, it was a wild summer. That
Yeah.
2021 summer, it was just the gold rush, as he refers to it. So you were you still, even with that sentiment and the FOMO, were you kind of tapped in? Were you in Discord? Did you have a get reading the blog in the spaces, the eventually spaces?
What? So Discord, I feel like was another kind of like undefined thing for me. Like, what is that? Fast forward a couple months later, I had my own Discord for my business, and I was running some things out of there. So everything happened so quickly, and I eventually got. I was really in Discord. Still didn't understand what I was looking at, and then just kind of sat there for a little bit. I think if anything, I was more, I guess, on Twitter at the time and seeing Jeremy, hearing some people talk about some stuff, seeing these like NFTs pop up. Oh man, that art looks really weird. Like, I guess I'm happy I missed out on it. I don't know. But then you start seeing some of these dollar signs. Then you start to see certain things like being compared to other projects. Like, no, I really did miss out on something. But yeah, so I think, I was probably like 3 weeks behind most things than I should have been, but was in there, and I still wouldn't change. I don't know. I'm really grateful for how things transpired and kind of what I've been able to go through because it showed me a different side of Web3, NFTs, people, and even myself. So, you know, I think I would have liked to have been part of the mint, but at the same time, like, I'm not angry where I am right now, all things considered.
Yeah, I totally get that. Uh, were you able to VCon 22? Did you go to that?
No, so I was definitely tapped in and I definitely wanted to go, but May 21st is my wife's birthday.
Mm,
So the first year I was like, I still didn't know a lot of what was really going on, definitely really excited about the opportunity to go. It's about to kind of like, pull the trigger, but I knew I had to tell my wife that I was going to miss her birthday. And then I'm like, I'm such a spontaneous person, and more spontaneous at some part of the years than others. So like, I think certain moments I can't plan more than 2 weeks ahead in my life. And I really wasn't able to, especially with like her birthday in mind. And I couldn't bring myself to be like, I'm going to miss your birthday for this unknown thing that I'm going to go run off to the people I don't even know. And so didn't go. And I think I regretted it after seeing, a lot in the back end, but knew I didn't really have the wherewithal to be able to talk to my wife about leaving it anyway. And I didn't have the confidence to like pull her into that life either.
Mm.
And I don't know if I still do a little bit. I think she understands some of it. I think she's just happy that I have a community of my own right now, because it's been something that's kind of been missing from my life. And so I think now she's like, yeah, you definitely should go. And then the second year, when I learned there was going to be the same date, and then I was like, okay, well, I will. I guess I'm going to tell her. I'm definitely going to tell. And I didn't tell her. And then, even more FOMO, which I saw things transpire. I think I really got into things after seeing people come out of the second VCon, which I'll get into. But I was still kind of like, that's like before cards and everything, or that was cards came before that. So it was very deep within the card realm at that moment. And then I think I saw cards take off more after the second one. And then that's where I was like, I think it was solidified in my mind. I was like, yeah, this is happening. And then I knew I wanted to make it part of who I was.
That's fascinating. So cardboard summer essentially. In my head, it's like after VCon. There were some streams happening, VCon 23. There were some streams happening prior to that, but it really kicked off after that VCon 2, which is exactly, I think, the time period you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it for you? Was it the streams? Were you minting friendships? What what really brought you in?
Well, I think, there was book games within there, all that
Hmm.
kind of stuff too, and whatever else was going on. And then, there was just something about being able to collect something, tangible, something to kind of touch from the world, from the NFT world, from Web3. And I thought the cards were so cool. It was just something different. And if anything, I just thought it was fun. And so the book games, getting the cards, I think that was kind of when the whole world of like, Series 2 was starting to come out, all that kind of stuff too. So I had a friend who was really big into, trading all the shit coins and everything like that. And he's the one who kind of kept my mind in it about, where we can put the money, what's exciting. He bought a bunch of, Gary's books to kind of get into the book games too. So then I was following along kind of with him, and then he was kind of keeping me invested in it all. And that's, I think, when the cards started to come out, and I feel like the cards just got me right away. I think the cards got me connected to the characters got me connected to, I think, interpersonal things, and then interpersonal things. And I think that's kind of where I was all over eBay at that time. I think then I started to kind of connect with people too. Saw a few there, but I was trying to kind of go back on this too. I think my earliest thought of when I started to connect with actually like face to face, I think was really with Josh, to be honest. I think when Josh started to stream, it was when his internet was even worse. It was when, he couldn't really even like, keep a whole stream going at that time. It was just it was raw and it was interesting, and you really felt like you were getting in at the ground floor when he was doing it. And so, I think that's when you sort of connect. Then like Dale kind of popped in for me and all those kind of fun things. And yeah, I don't know. I don't want to run off too much there, but that's kind of like, I think, where I started to get that much more connected.
Mm. Um, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I think the first time I remember meeting slash seeing you for the first time was on an early Josh stream, and I think it was the first time I ever played CNC. It was we did like a four-way thing, and I didn't know like what was going on. Like I played a little with Chels, and um, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. Definitely some rough internet, but that's part of the story. That's part of the story. So you didn't make it to the first two VCons, but I do know that you were entrenched enough and got the invite to the national to play in the first alpha playtest tournament. That one you went to. First of all, take me back to the moment where you realized you were getting this really exclusive invitation, because it was a very finite, around 50 ish invitations went out to people. Talk to me about getting that and just how that experience was for you, especially now that knowing that was your first big IRL experience in the community.
Yeah, I guess that really was like that was like my first VCon, if you want to think about it, right? But I did feel so connected with so many people that moment that I was like, yeah, I didn't feel like anyone was a stranger really. But also I think that's also kind of where my mind went. And I was like, everyone's connected a little bit differently than other things in my world. And like something was there and like it's still like I'm like, what is it? Why is everyone connected right now? And that's what I started to see. But I mean, I don't know. I guess just to be completely transparent with it all, I remember applying to kind of go or saying that I wanted to go. I remember getting it, but I was like, I've missed two VCons. There's no way I'm going to miss this. I was like, a flight's not going to be that expensive from New York to Chicago. So yeah, I'm going to make this happen. And I was all about it. And then and then my wife threw another wrench in the whole thing. She's like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to Colorado for this summer. We're going to go, we're going to go rent the house out next to your brother's, and then we're going to be out there. And I was like, oh, it's the same time as this. And I was like, nope, still going to make this happen. So we were out in Colorado, and I actually flew from Denver out to Chicago from there. But yeah, the whole time, like I was very invested. There was like no way I was gonna miss it. And I just remember the feeling like this is what I want to make this part of who I am. I want to make this part of my hobby. I'm going to be there. I'm going to go to this weird card show. I had an uncle who played for the Jets actually. He was a punter for the Jets a while ago, and he's always been, a card collector. So like card collecting to me was always like part of his world, and I was like, he's always a little bit strange. And I was like, I guess I'm going to do this. So it wasn't foreign to me that there was this other world of people. I just didn't associate with it. And then now I just kind of like took the plunge and I was like, I'm going to make this part of me. And I was happy to. And I think knowing that VeeFriends was something different, I just want to do it. I think my wife was like, "You're flying where for why? I don't really understand this." But she was like, "I guess I'm not stopping you." I think my wife knows that when I set my mind to something, like there's no stopping me. So she was like, "Yeah, let's just do it. I guess you're gonna make it happen." So yeah, that was kind of my first IRL experience, and you can call it almost my first VCon, but it definitely felt special. I was short cards. Oh, I was actually short cards. Was out in Colorado. I didn't have my cards with me, and I think I had kind of realized something at the time. And yeah, I guess I was connected enough with Josh, and I was like, Josh, I need cards. I need a battle deck. And so I gave him a list of the cards that I wanted, and he put them together, and he brought them to Chicago for me. And so then I was able to get into the tournament, with those. I bought them from him. I still have them. I think that they are definitely kind of a memento for me
Nice.
at this point.
Such a cool event. Uh, that picture, that group picture, popped up on the feed not too long ago, and it just I think I wasn't there. I remember watching the stream. My wife Chelsea was in it, so I was tapped in, you know, just hoping maybe she'd pull off a miracle and bring home the black cat. But just one of those signature events. I want to go back to something you said. You said you just knew that you wanted to be a part of it, meaning the community. And obviously, since then, that's almost a year ago. It feels like a long time ago, but since then, you started a podcast in the community. You've been all over, streams, motivating people, inspirational things that you're opening the door to your own personal life. I When I started this podcast, I just knew I believed in Gary. I believed that this is going to be a big thing, but I I can't articulate. I just knew that the community was going to be bigger, and I wanted to document both the VeeFriends journey and the journey of this community. The people that come and go, the people that build amazing things off of it. I just know that had to be a huge part of it, and I still to this day can't fully articulate it. I should try writing it again because I've done that in the past. But I want to double click into that. When did you feel like, okay, I need to create, I need to put myself out there, I need to show what I'm doing for my daughter? What propelled you to do that? If there was a moment or maybe a series of moments. because you've done it in a big way. From not showing up at any VCon, now you're one of these figures that whether it's something that you intended to or not, you're just people look up to you and you inspire others. So you've come a long way in a short time. So I'm very curious the precipice for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely. Um, I don't know how I see myself. I mean, I even being here right now and knowing who you've had on, I'm like, do I even deserve this seat? Right? There's a little bit of this imposter syndrome. I kind of feel like I'm obviously still building. I've always been building. I've always been someone who is really reflective and wants to connect with people. Um, and I think I think through a lot of the streams, I started to get a different feeling from everyone that I came across, whether it was, I can name so many people, but, I'm going to say Josh again, really early on. I'm going to say, Thought Wrong was in there. Mike down in Delaware, Nath, right? So all these names just started to kind of pop up and then they would keep coming. And then it was like, okay, well, I know that person because they were sharing this. And then all these identities really started. So it wasn't just like, there was so much more depth to each handle and screen name. Like it wasn't just how it's been in the past. There's been like these people were sharing so much more. They were being so open. It was fun. It wasn't hard to communicate with people. And so it was something where I was like, I keep coming back. I just noticed that. And I was like, I keep coming back because I feel comfortable, but I keep wanting to understand that person more. And then, I think there was actually a night where someone had asked about like average age of people. And I don't know if you had this, but I would sit back just in the NFT world and I always thought that I was like sitting back and like talking with like 16-year-olds sometimes. I was like, well, that person's got to be like 16 or like that person's like early 20s or something. And then someone asked about average age and it was like, okay, late 30s, early 40s, late 20s. And it was like all of a sudden, there was almost this like connection of people and everyone was like the same age. Not that age defines anything, like take that for what it is, but it was something where it's like, oh, like we all have actually a lot more experience, I think, under our belt than we're actually letting on to. And then I think slowly people would end up saying something like, oh, I got to go help put the kids down. Or, my wife this, or, I have to go take care of that for, the family. And then I was like, man, everyone, kind of similar in age right now, and a lot of people dealing with the same thing. And then it made me want to understand what everyone was really going through. And, is your wife letting you stay up really late and doing this? Like, not that we're dictated by them, but it's like, where are you doing this? Are you like hiding in your basement? Like, I'm playing with cards. My wife just gave me a really weird look right now. Like, what does your wife think about this? And so I think like there was a little bit of this vulnerability that kind of started to show up even more when people started to mention more about their family life and then more about their kids. And then people would be like, oh, my kid likes that card the best. So then we kind of trade those cards out. And it was just this special connection with people that I couldn't let go of. And it was like, I almost kind of thought about like, oh, like I'm having this issue. If I'm having this issue, like I've always looked at myself as like the average person. So I've always been like, if I'm having this problem, someone else is too. And there has to be a way that we can connect over this. And I think when I had come across Blaze at some point, and we were just kind of communicating. We had like the same energy online. I remember saying something along the lines of like, "Man, if I lived closer to Blaze, we'd be fast friends." And then, fast forward to Comic Con, and Blaze was down there for one of the card tournaments, and like we just kind of connected again, and like the energy was really cool. And then he was someone who likes to create as well, and then just kind of it rolled into this like we want to create something that our kids can look back on, that we can kind of document like what we're doing and help other people as well. And we like storytelling. We like to kind of get into people's heads a little bit. We want to understand ourselves better through other people and vice versa. So a lot of that kind of started with just a lot of this, people started to show a little bit more about themselves. And I thought that was really cool. So it just kind of Rick rolled into that. And I think it really became a thing. I remember the day that that it was. I was here in this office and I was upstairs, and maybe a couple days before, I think Blaze had said something about like, I really want to create something. I really want this. I really want to kind of put this down on tape. I really want to be talking to people. It's like, yeah, man, I really do too. And I remember I just texted, we had a group text going, and then I said, let's just do it. Let's just make it a thing. Let's just start, let's start spaces, because I didn't do a space before. And, then it kind of rolled into everything it kind of is today, which I guess I'm kind of glazing over a lot. But yeah, that's, again, the connections, vulnerability, a lot of people kind of being in the same position. So it was just a cool moment to kind of realize.
So we're for the audience, we're talking about VeeDads, with space now a podcast, about like what's your tagline for the VeeDads podcast?
Helping dads and kids become more confident in their health, their mindset, and their connection.
I love that. And I said this when I had the privilege of coming on your podcast, but I'll say it again for people here. Like, I just think it's so many people are building amazing things in this community, and I don't want to talk down to anybody, because everything has its place and we're living in abundance here. But I just truly feel, and maybe my vantage point is a dad myself. I just think it's the most important content that's coming out of this community because of the conversations you're having, the issues you're touching on, and it just giving dads a voice to get their perspective and just to jam, kind of like what you're just talking about from the origin story, like what's going on, like just checking in on each other, sharing advice. This is what's happened to me. What's going on with you? Just the whole vibe, and you have an amazing way of, felt like I was sitting on the couch, and I could jam. So incredibly important stuff. Definitely content that our children will be proud of. So I wanted to shout that out, and I hope you keep on going. On that though, like what have you learned about yourself since starting that podcast?
Good question. I feel like I don't have like those things to rattle off right away about this is what I've learned. But I mean, everything with talking with dads, yeah, I think I just wanted to give people a voice, but I think it's me projecting on it too. I feel like I don't like gender roles. I don't like the ideas that, men are going to do this in the relationship, women are going to do that. I believe we're all struggling in a certain way, and I think that there's a lot of empowerment in one side of parenthood sometimes more than the other, and I think that there's a lot of stuff that I think men do hide. And I think that if we can just be able to, I don't want to make this sound so cliche. It's like, I don't want men to think that they can't be vulnerable and like share their emotions, because I think it's more than that. I think, and I think that's why I like to understand like where you came from. And I'm still developing this like how I can get into someone's past. And I don't want to make it sound like therapy. And I'm not a therapist, although I do a lot of kind of nutrition therapy. But it's like, even like when I was talking with you, Rob, like my goal was not to get into like the pain points of your childhood, but it's like I want to unwind who you are from where you came from. And I think that we can, I think, appreciate a lot of that. I think that we can become stronger people. I think that if we share those things, we can understand, maybe where our parents were coming from. And I think I needed that. I think I needed to be able to hear where people were coming from too. So I learned a lot about myself as I'm hearing that there are a lot of people that have lived experiences that maybe sound more tragic in some cases, and they sound difficult, but at the time when you're a kid, you don't really realize that. You don't know what you're going through. And you also don't really understand what your parents could have been going through. Not to give them excuses or give them like a pass for maybe some things that maybe had kind of, screwed us up or made life a little bit harder. But I think, I was saying this, I don't know if it was with you or someone else more recently, but it's like all of the things that I almost hold against my parents a little bit, for right or wrong. It's like I don't know if I am becoming uh more upset about it or becoming more forgiving as I go through it myself right now. And it's like a Band-Aid has been ripped off that needed to, that it would have no other way done it. Like nothing else in my life besides talking with people in this way would have helped me. So I'm still exploring myself. And I'm actually really nervous. I know like Blaze recently was like, all right, I think it's time that we both interview each other. And a little bit of me is like, nope, nope, I got enough people lined up right now. Like I don't I don't know if I want to go on yet because I don't know if I'm ready to go to that place just yet. Not that I don't want to be vulnerable, but because I don't think that I've been able to organize it enough to walk away from it with a solution or an answer that I know maybe would be good in terms of like maybe, bringing some of those bridges back and, recreating the relationships that maybe would make my life that much more enriching right now. Right. So it's like I want people to hear me say that. I want to hear that from other people because I think across the board we've all gone through that in some way. And I think that, if someone tells me like talking with Brofit, I think I mentioned something like I kind of have a pretty shattered relationship with my younger brother. Brofit went through a really tragic event with his older brother. And it's something where he's like, man, you know what? You just have to make amends. Now I'm starting to think about that and I'm like, yeah, I get, why wouldn't I? Or I'm hearing about, some people's fathers, mothers that went through, alcoholism and kind of how it affected them and what they're going through right now. And be like, oh man, that is really hard. And I understand it's like, oh, that sounds similar to me. And that's how you got through it. And that sounds even harder. Okay, I could definitely get through that, I guess. Right. So, I mean, all that even sounds like a mishmash of thoughts. And I don't even know where to go with it. But it's something where it's like, I just want to be able to open up and get vulnerable with people. And I think maybe more selfishly than I let on. I think
Mm.
I'm projecting on all of it and I really enjoy it. I think I do like getting that emotional side of people. Um, I think it's helping. It helps me. So maybe I just think I'm gonna keep going with it. It's been
I
fun.
like I said, I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand by my comments. I think it's so important, and to unpack that, like, have you ever listened to any Tony Robbins or seen any of that?
Yeah, probably not as much as could benefit me, but definitely I've listened to a lot because a lot of the people that I look to as mentors in the business space, I think always refer to Tony Robbins. So yeah.
So I'm not like that. There's like just like Gary guys. There's like real like Tony people that like uh follow and live by every word he says. But what I will say is just like in all of Gary's content, how he listen to 25 seconds to 2 minutes of your business issue or your life issue, and he'll just kind of quickly break it down and just have a way with words. Tony Robbins does that with real deep emotional things, and he'll take that from potentially a surface level question or issue. But usually, in my little experience with him, he'll always start with the same question: Who, when you were younger, whose love did you strive for more, your mother's or your father's? And that's his starting point, which A takes you way back, and B, like you learn about where you stand with those feelings uh, immediately. So it's fascinating, and it's just like I don't need to regurgitate everything you just said, but it's important, and it's funny because we are in a space where everyone's older. If you think that most people came in through Gary's core audience for a long time was just what wine, of course, and you have to be a certain age to really give a shit about wine, and then business content and life advice. So like everyone's bound to be older. He didn't really get into the TikTok and younger stuff until the last 5 years or so. So of course we have that demographic here, and then it's fun to have this community of real life people like you to have real life conversations with, and then we can point to patient panda as the reference point, or the spontaneous seahorse, or the patient pig as uh barometers, or reference points when we're talking about this deep real life stuff. So it's just a really interesting dynamic of what we have going on here in terms of interacting with each other and just being there for each other and helping push each other forward and getting through the trials and tribulations of life. So for you to house that and host that party is amazing. So check out all that to say, check out VeeDads if you haven't.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely excited to keep kind of getting into that, and I think that is where I've found a lot of people, I think, are attaching to these certain characters very much from their childhood. I'm finding that a lot of these individuals are kind of walking hand in hand right now with the character they wish they had when they were a kid. And so whether it's, some sort of confidence with like Confident Cobra, or, you mentioned like Patient Panda, like they wish they had more patience from people as a kid, right? All those kind of things. And I think the last thing I'll say, because I kind of cut you off there, was just that, I feel that parents, maybe I'm biased, that the parents are the bridge to helping the younger generation understand what these characters mean because of what they mean to us now and what they could have meant to us as a kid. And I said this before, I honestly believe that VeeFriends will not be as successful without parents to be guiding the meaning of these characters with the younger generation.
Mm.
And I feel very confident in that just because I know a lot of that is it's coming from Gary as a kid through what was happening with his parents and all that kind of stuff too. So I think that's what kind of keeps me going a little bit.
I love that. I love that. So with that said, I think that's a great segue for me to ask you why the gnome. You're the knowing gnome. You have a whole publicized rehoming the gnome project where you're gathering up every collectible that the gnome has ever been featured on. But why the gnome for you?
Oh man, I think from the easiest answer, which is if I didn't pick a character, I would try to be collecting everything, and I will have spent more money than I have now, and I couldn't do that. So I knew that just focusing myself, knowing myself, I needed to just focus in on a character. Initially, I was actually really drawn to the dynamic dinosaur, only because it was holding two trees that looked like broccoli, and I'm a dietitian. And it felt so shallow. I was like, I don't know, but I remember I was trying to chase down some of the dynamic dinosaurs, and then I think there was someone that was already kind of within it. I was like, oh man, this isn't fun. Like they keep getting in there before I. But around this time, and I mean, this is a big part of kind of the VeeDads kind of world and the content that I create and who I focus on with my clients and stuff like that. But I think, around 2023, when was that? So like, I would say the fall of 2022 into spring of 2023, I guess if I had to boil this down to anything, I kind of went through a period of like a mental breakdown. And, I had my daughter. My marriage was just challenged, I think, with, where my business kind of was in the moment. Not that it was horrible, but it just took a lot of work. It was taking me away from our new child who was having sleep issues. My dog was like actively dying during that time. It was like my first child. It was our first child, my wife and I's. And there's just like a lot going on. And I've always really had a hard time with anxiety and depression. And like I go back to my childhood with all of this and a lot of, unmet emotions and feelings that no one seemed to understand except one person in my life, who is really special to me, who, there's a lot to unpack there. I just, when I was a kid, but like there was someone in my life who understood, and she would come to me and she'd say, Ryan, if you want me to pay for you to go to a therapist, let me know. And at that time, for years, she would say this. And I didn't really understand what it meant, but she saw in me that there was a lot of unhealthy emotions and feelings, all that kind of stuff too. And it's always been around. So I've always been in therapy, and I'm talking about the gnome, so I'm getting there. But with all of this, it is, I think with anxiety, depression, the inability to kind of like really build my business or get through tasks the way I needed to, I finally did some of my, what I preach all the time, which is self advocacy. And through therapy and everything else, I started to ask deeper questions. Like, okay, you're saying that I am that stressed or anxious or you know uh, executive dysfunction and memory issues, all that kind of stuff. Like, okay, you're telling me that that's so, and we keep trying to correct those things. But it wasn't until I started to kind of dig deeper, and I was like, well, okay, are all of these connected to something? And it's where I started to kind of realize that a deeper diagnosis of ADHD was there, and I was diagnosed at like 40. And it was hard even then because it's like it almost felt trendy to kind of bring this kind of stuff up because social media was talking about ADHD and all this kind of stuff as well. But I was like, yeah, but without social media, I wouldn't have been able to put all of these pieces together. And I wouldn't have then been able to ask you the questions that actually taught me about how my brain works. And it wasn't until after that mental breakdown kind of moment where like I couldn't really get out of bed. My depression was really bad. My anxiety was all over the place. My business almost started to kind of fail a little bit because I would just like my clients would just kind of like lapse over time and I wouldn't like grab new clients. And like even the clients that like stayed with me during that time, I'm like, what? I gained like 20 pounds during that time. I would like show up to my sessions. Like I would get people what they needed, but there was not like nothing that I was like really going over the top for. And I'm like such a service oriented person. Like things were just off.
Right.
And, but I mean, during this time, it was like I wasn't sleeping. I looked back at my sleep logs. I think I was sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night. So that was something that was getting to me as my younger daughter was like having issues. My wife's like issue sleeping. My wife is like a really deep sleeper. So like I was the default parent in a lot of those moments and I would get up and then my dog was in the middle. I keep mentioning my dog now, but like my dog was like having like his liver was failing, kidneys were failing, everything was failing on him. He was uncomfortable. We didn't know how to put him down. It's the first time we were doing it. So like all of this was happening. And this is all like as I'm like collecting VeeFriends cards. And I didn't really know what was happening in the moment. And then it wasn't really until I was able to kind of go through, the proper self advocacy and asking questions, then actually getting tested and diagnostic type of testing to understand, hey, your brain works this way. This is why you are what you are. Your brain just does this, right? And it was almost like I hated the person telling me like you have ADHD. I'm like, what does that mean? Like just like because I think the definition itself is just inappropriate and incorrect. If
Mhm.
like I would never wish ADHD on anybody. If you want to know what it is, and then I can get into why the gnome is here. But with ADHD, it is a mind that is forever ruminating. It's it's forever thinking back over the same thought and putting different kind of scenarios together and then thinking about if it fails and then if it's going to succeed, but if it fails this, and now you in your mind have already played this out and you failed and you can't keep going and you just can't turn it off. It's just noises in your head and it just continues. But it's been that way for my whole life. I thought it was normal. And so when I was really thinking about, going through therapy and finally getting through a moment where like I went through the nutrition because I knew what it meant to eat for your brain, and to support things like executive functioning and dopamine circuits and all that kind of stuff too. I did the exercise. I focused on sleep. My dog had finally passed away, so it kind of took a lot of things off of me. But I went through all the natural, routes of trying to take care of myself. And it wasn't until I finally said, all right, I'm open to trying medication that my world finally kind of came together. And I was able to really be really successful in so many different areas. My thoughts were definitely more aligned. I felt like I could actually get things done when I needed to, when I wanted to. My business was like, man, I couldn't even just get that done. And some people will say that these things are just learned, like learned experiences. And it's like, it's not.
Mhm.
It's just something that becomes part of your life. It becomes a part of your identity. And it's something that's really hard to explain to someone else that doesn't understand it. And it's just, it is the way your brain is. And so when I started to kind of look at certain things around kind of like knowing and the knowing gnome and wanting to connect with characters, not wanting to spend as much money, the gnome to me, as I kind of dove into the definition of what it was, because, there's a whole side of this, which I guess I'm not going to get crazy about, but like I've had this infatuation with like Norway and everything else and like gnomes and trolls and all this kind of stuff too. So I was just kind of drawn there. But like the gnome itself is this just like forever trickster kind of character, thinking, playing, like related to nature and all this kind of stuff too. And so I always saw the gnome as like knowing, but knowing so much and not being able to turn like his brain off and needing to now kind of like go play tricks on things and like go do things in nature, run around and like just be who it is because of how its brain worked. Whether you want to connect it how I just connected it, I don't care. But it's what I did and I really appreciated it. And then that's where I connected the troll with it. And the troll to me was like this like other character that kind of helped the gnome kind of put its thoughts into actions. And then like as like a team, they can kind of come together. I know it might sound crazy, but there was just like a moment to me where everything came together and I was like, that's it. The gnome makes me feel good. The gnome is who I am and I am going to follow through with this. So I'll stop talking.
I love it, and thank you for your transparency. And it's so meta that you're saying this and that we're talking now. I swear, no bullshit. Um, Today, literally today, on my way back from work, was the first time after years when I became self-aware, and I feel like it's progressively gotten worse and inhibited me years. But today was the first time I called to a place to inquire about getting tested. Like I've been self-diagnosed for a while, but I don't really have any besides like the food and this, that, and the other thing. Nothing like real, like official on the books answers. But I am picking up what you're putting down. And I love that you have that clarity because like that's what I've been seeking. Like I feel like I don't know if it's my ambitions have in the last 2 3 years 4 years have just kind of increased, and I feel plus you throw 3 kids on top of that, with my brain, like I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's supposed to be like this. um
And this is the hard thing. It's like some of those things you can be like, yeah, they're always there. And I'm very open to the idea that becoming a parent and going through what we're going through, it only magnifies them, right?
mm,
So it's like we go through seasons of our life and we will, be at a point where we're not so stressed with everything. And maybe, the things about us within executive functioning and attention deficits and all that kind of stuff too, the ruminating thoughts, those will not be as magnified as we move forward in life. But I honestly feel that if we can take care of it now, it's only going to be that much better for us in the future. And there's a
yeah,
little bit of anger here in terms of like, man, why couldn't I caught this sooner? Why didn't my parents catch this sooner? Why didn't teachers catch this sooner? All of this kind of stuff here. So, um, I'm glad you're there. Congratulations.
do you think your mind working that way though is do you see it as a superpower? Do you see it as a a positive trait, or do you?
I see it as a defining trait for sure. And I think it makes me who I am and I love it. There's a hard thing here because I knew when I was actually going through all of this and I finally accepted the fact that like my brain's just different. I mean, people with ADHD, their brain just physiologically it's just different. It's different the way it connects with itself, it's different the way it actually looks in some kind of ways too, but it's different. And so if we can just accept the fact that like I just don't work the same way that you do. And I know that you as a teacher, you must also appreciate the idea that like yeah, that person just doesn't learn the same way that that person learns.
Yeah,
And I think the more that we try and put people into these boxes to learn the way that we think they should, or the way that it's easier for the teacher to teach, that we're not really supporting everyone, right? So I think that when we kind of think about who I am, I I want to appreciate where I'm able to thrive. And I know that I can thrive emotionally with people. I like to get deep with people. I get really competitive. I'm a really good athlete. Like all of the things that come along with it is definitely good. I think when it comes to something like medication, I get scared it's going to take that away. Like there's an edge
Mm,
about the way I talk. There's an edge about the way that I like to, like I want to brainstorm with you, but when I brainstorm with you, things are going to sound intense. But that's the way I go through it, and I've been really successful doing it. I don't want to lose that, right? And so it's something where the medication, it only helps you now put it into a little bit of more of an order, but doesn't take it away from you. And I think that's the thing that kind of helps. Like now it's giving me a better memory for what I said 20 minutes ago to now bring up now to make things sound a little bit more cohesive, to explain my points of view. And in business, that's huge, right? Because now in my business, I can put those things together, and now my business can be more successful. My family can be more financially successful. But before I couldn't do that. And so I was really, worried about taking medication for that kind of thing. So I don't think it's a superpower. I think if we look at something like how our brain works from an ADHD standpoint and say that, well, that gives us a superpower, it almost makes it sound like it's better than someone else. And then they're going to be better than us in
mm,
something else too. Like, I don't know if I like that kind of idea as much as it just makes me who I am. There's a little bit, the last thing I'll say about this is like, there's a little bit of survivor's guilt right now, um, if I can call it that. But I knew that as I was going through my diagnosis, I became such a huge advocate for people with ADHD that were really struggling. And I still am. But I started to create part of my business wanting to support individuals with ADHD. And going through it, I was like, this is what I'm challenged with. I understand what you're doing. Now I'm going to help you as best as I can from the nutrition side. I'm going to now refer out, if we have this conversation, to people that I know are going to help you. Once I took medication, I do feel like I became a lot less vigilant about that because I didn't feel it as deeply. Because now I was able to focus on myself and become that much more, if I can say, successful in kind of what I needed to. And
mm.
so I wasn't ruminating on all these things as much. And so now I kind of feel like I left some of those people behind because I did start that medication, which I still wouldn't change it. I still would make sure I'm doing it. So, yeah.
Uh, Thank you for sharing all this, and I'm definitely gonna hit you up and have an off camera, more in depth inquiry about this and your journey. But thank you for talking about it here. I knew I knew we weren't going to have a typical like how many book games did you get conversation. I knew we were going somewhere else. I didn't know where, but I knew we were going to go somewhere else during this conversation. Amazing, and I'm so happy for you because like that's like a new lease on life, so to speak. When you just have such a breakthrough. One question, and I'm pivoting now. One question, thinking about dads, thinking about we're just a different place in life. We're in an ecosystem where so many people just for what one reason or another, there's many, um, put Gary on this pedestal. He's the end all and be all. So many of our actions uh, depend on what he says or does. Or I'm curious, like, why? Why do you think that is in our world? What is it about him that makes him so influential, special, whatever whatever we're gonna label it as? Um, I just I was thinking about that yesterday, and I think you're a great person to ask. I think I'm going to start asking it more people. But what is it about him?
I think it's a good question. I think there's a little bit of, as you were asking that, these are just my thoughts. One was that I don't really care about Gary. That was my first thought. Now, obviously, I do. So I do mean it, but let me just put some context there. In that, like, I, any of the connections I have, if you did remove Gary, I've been so incredibly grateful for the people that I've met and what the conversations I've been able to have, and, all of that. And so, Gary maybe connected us, but I'm almost like, I could, in my mind, almost remove him. And then maybe it would show, where he means the most. But I think I think people get connected with him for two things. One thing I think I just want to be honest about. He's just, I think at times he's the rich uncle. He's the rich uncle that people can fall back on and just know, well, he has the money. Like, we in this project, we kind of feel that if anything were to be a challenge, like, he does have the money to back it up, right? If I can sound like, if I can give the most shallow answer, like, that's what I think sometimes. I think, like, okay, got it. Like, he'll just buy a bunch of the, NFTs off the floor and whatever. He has the money to start the shows, and he has the money to buy the next thing, get the next connection, right? So it's the confidence that, like, is he going to fail? Probably not. Why is he not? Well, he has the money, he has the connections, all that kind of stuff too. If he didn't, I think it would just be a different thing. So I have to be honest and just think that sometimes. The other side of it is like, but why do you want to go up to that man and go say hi to him? Is it just because he has money and connections? No. It's because he's someone who is confident and kind. Those are the two words that I would always say, like, confident and kind. He just is. He wants to listen. He wants to say something. He wants to share something. Like, all of those kind of things, I think, is just incredibly special. So, I don't know how to connect all of those, but those are my thoughts. He knows how to take, I think, the human condition and break it down in a way that other people can't. I think he can take that kindness, and he can end up taking, the confidence, and I think take what you're saying and just make it make sense in the moment. And people need that. I think people are just confused sometimes. And he's able to just kind of pull it all together really nicely. And I think the characters do that. The characters are the human condition split into all of its parts, and then we were just putting it back together. And I think he's done that even before the characters. I think that's what he likes. I will segue that into, I've met Gary face to face 3 times. And I've always walked away embarrassed. I've never walked away from a conversation with Gary and was like, I'm glad I said what I said. I got some really good feedback. Like, if I think back to it, I get so nervous. So you ask this, and I'm like, yeah, there is something there that maybe I can't explain too. I think back to, like, when I was at a Jets game, and and I walked up to him, and the only thing I could say, I was like, you changed my life, man. But it was like, he didn't change my life. I didn't know what else to say. And he's like, oh, I'm glad. And he looked at me, and I think he was like waiting for me to say something else. I had nothing else to say. And it was like silent for a second. And we just like threw up the fives. I just took a picture. It sounds normal, but it was like so much in my head. There was another time, I was at his birthday party. At his birthday party, I walked up to him, and I still know what to say. I got in line. And in my head, I was like, don't get in line, Ryan. You have nothing good to say to him right now. And so, like, I could have gone up and said, happy birthday. I could have gone up and said, thanks for having me. But instead, I go up there, awkward silence for a second. I go, what do you want us to do? Is this what you want of us? Is this what you want of us? Like, I think he was like, what are you saying? And I was like, I don't know what I'm saying. Like, is this what you want? I don't know what I don't know what was going on. And he, like, I must, and I still think this, like, there was like 2 people after me. He like ended up leaving. I was like, I think I made him leave. I think I made him want to leave. Like, my question was that dumb. Like, I didn't know what to say. It was like, I never know. Like, I'm going up there. I'm like, I really want to say something good and deep. I really want to get something from this. Maybe I want to remember me. I don't really care that much. But every time I get in that moment, uh, I'm like at the point where I'm like, just don't waste his time, Ryan. Just don't even go up there.
That's that's so amazing and true. And I've had a few conversations on this show with people about, like, when you're get that moment, the few seconds, minute, whatever, like, he's got like a vortex, like a force field, and like you get sucked in, and like, yeah, like you'll forget what
Yeah.
you want to say, and just kind of blurt out whatever. I've been there. I've been there. Um, you know, I have no idea what I said to him on the VeeFam sessions. Twitter, my pinned post is when I first told, this poster behind me I made, and I had Andy sign it. I told him what I was doing, and I waited in line, and I told Gary. And in that picture, I'm like, man, ah, whatever I said, I don't remember what I said, but whatever I said definitely wasn't like sensible. Like, I don't know what I said. Um, but yeah, I feel like in the interactions that follow that one. I've gotten better, but yeah, you definitely get sucked in, and he's just so locked in, and you know how eloquent he is and articulate, um, and it's just we stumble trying to match that.
Yeah, you want to be able to ask the right question to gain so much from him in the moment. And you just can't. You just have to. And he really is such, from what I see, because obviously I've never had the appropriate conversation to know this personally. But like he's such a down to earth like person that just I think he just wants to know what's going on. I will say the last conversation I did have with him, which was still awkward. It was at another Jets game. Uh, Jets game that VeeFriends was at, and I saw him, and I guess it was after Thanksgiving. I think that's what it was. And I mentioned something like, "Oh yeah, how was your Thanksgiving?" He was like, "Yeah, it was really good." I was like, "Ours wasn't as good." And so like I just still I didn't know what to say, but I think he knew. He was like, "All right, man. I think this is like your third time." Like in my head, like I've had this kind of like he knew. He's like, "Man, you know what? This is your third time, third strike." So I think he was like, "I'm just gonna take it over from here." And he was like, "Yeah, you going to the Jets game? Yeah, you're excited about going?" I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna get a jersey today." But I was like, I wasn't gonna get a jersey that day. Like I don't even know why I told him that. And he's like, "Oh yeah, what jersey are you gonna get?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna get Wilson." And he's like, "Oh, you know what? You really shouldn't get Wilson because he's going to change his number next year." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, thank you so much." I was like so overly grateful about it. But that was the most normal conversation I've had with him. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I really have to just like chill or just be like notes. I have to like go up and be like, "I'm so sorry." I don't know. I feel like I have to apologize to him.
That, well, maybe you'll have him on VeeDads one day, and you'll get your thoughts together.
I'll have to pass that one off to Blaze, maybe. Who knows?
Amazing. That's awesome. Just not because I'm laughing at you. I'm more laughing with you just because I know how common that occurrence is, and I've lived it.
Yeah.
Um, he's really, really set the tone. Like, we're just kind of playing in the house that he built community wise. So for that, I am super grateful. With that said, so many things. It's such a wonderful community. People are all the time doing things for each other, giving things to each other, gifting things to each other. Um, a lot of it is in front of the world on the TL, but a lot of it is behind closed doors. It's a very unfair question, but is there anyone in particular that you want to give roses to, blow the whistle on for being just an unbelievable human being?
Man, it is kind of the pressure just because there are so many people.
So many.
I mean, I wish I had the perfect answer lined up right now, and I have so many names just kind of going through my head, but I think that just, certain people that have been so incredibly kind or have not faltered from who they said they were, and then their actions really showed it. I mean, I would call certain people out that have really touched me, that have like really kind of been honest and open with me, like Nath. I think both of the Australians that I, have really come to know so well, Craig and Nath, just like amazing people. Our West Coast people. I mean, Savvy being there has been someone who I know has, have a lot of her own challenges come along, but she's kind of been showing up no matter what's been actually happening. Brofit, is someone that I've really respected and looked up to so much and have just like appreciated every single conversation that we've actually had. Dale being somebody that, I think that his ingenuity, his creativity, his openness, with helping anyone in such cool ways has been so fun. The relationships that I've had with Josh and Blaze is, I really think something that is almost unbreakable at this point. And just across the board, I mean, take those names for what they are. But I mean, I don't think one name can be said without naming 10 others. So
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's you can almost say infinite because they just keep on coming. The people that don't really fit the mold don't stay long. They really don't.
Yeah, there's something again about I think what filters us out. I think there's so many people that are just here. I think it's, whether you want to call it the empathy, the accountability, the kindness, all that kind of stuff. I think you just have a different layer of person that is still around and here right now. That I think whatever the next layer of humanity is, I think that you can find that within VeeFriends. I think that what is going to level up a lot of how we all connect better as people, you're going to find it within our community.
I love that. So well said. Um, the last question before we get to our last segment here. Which character do you, Ryan Turner, need to spend more time with?
Good question. I always feel like accountability needs to be there. I would spend more time and learn from, I would say, and I'll go the other way. For some reason, the accountable anteater is not really talked about enough. So I would hang out with the anteater, and then I want to learn about what's going on with the ant. But that's where it would be. Maybe an easy answer, simple answer. That's what I would. That's what I would do. But there's so many. I mean, I think the spontaneous seahorse is definitely something that I always like want to connect with. I think that things like the peaceful pelican, the calm clam, I think I kind of get there with like those characters sometimes because they're like so not me. So that's where I'm at.
I love that. Before we head to our last bit here, I just want to thank you again for just not only coming on, but for being you again. Not to be totally over redundant, but just all of the amazing content you're putting out in the world, and just how you become such an unbelievably relatable but just inspiring ambassador for dads, for VeeFriends, for everything. So thank you for that. Sometimes I'm just like, in the grinds, babies, stress, everything, and I'm like feeling a certain way, and I see your notes to your daughter, and the wonderful note with the drawing and like the sliced up kiwi and the nuts and like this perfect little thing. And I'm like, fucking Ryan. And it just I just have to snap out of it and raise my bar again. Because that's where my bar is, as a dad. So thank you for putting that out there.
Yeah, man.
Um, so uh, the game is Micro Macro Spitfire. I'm going to throw a lot of quick ones at your way. You can answer as general in the macros you like, or you can get your microscope out and elaborate your answer. So here we go. Micro Macro Spitfire with Ryan Turner. Uh, Favorite teacher you had growing up and one reason why?
Man, I've been searching for this guy's name for so long, but he was my biology teacher. I got kicked out of my first college and went to the County College of Morris, and he taught me to love science again. And then I went to Coastal Carolina for marine science because of that guy. He was a Navy diver, but he made science so fun. I cannot find his name, but it's that guy, and I would give him all the roses if I could, if I remembered his name right now.
What's your favorite physical VeeFriends piece of memorabilia or collectible?
It is going to be what I will gain in the future. It is going to be the knowing gnome figure that is in Gary's office right now. I'm sticking with that. I will not say anything else.
I love that secret talent you have that most people don't know.
Man, secret talent I have. I don't know where to go with that, except I will say this is that I I recently got into vermiculture. And I now keep worms and I compost my own food at home. And I feel like these type of like old world skills and stuff, like making bread and all that kind of stuff there. Maybe it's just, I don't know, the basic person in me, but those are the things I do. So like I love doing that. Is that a
Love
talent? No, it's not, but it's just me.
that. I love that answer. What was your favorite IP growing up?
Mighty Max. Now, no one remembers Mighty Max, but Mighty Max was awesome. The kid traveled around. He like threw his hat and opened a portal and he jumped in there with Virgil and he like saved different worlds. No one remembers it, but I had this black and white little TV next to my bed growing up and I watched every single episode. Mighty Max, underrated.
I remember. Favorite concert you've ever been to?
Wasn't a big concert goer. I feel like my dad never got me into that. My dad was a musician too, which is always kind of weird, which then always makes you think about it. But Gavin DeGraw, over at the Stone Pony was probably one of the best concerts. I remember there was a moment where he was singing and I was standing in front of the speaker, and at one point as he was singing, everything just stopped. There was no sound. It was so loud that I think it blew out my eardrums, but to this day that was the best concert.
Amazing. Favorite 90s movie?
Best 90s movie is going to be Red Dawn. Is that 90s or 80s? It might be 90s, but we're going to go with it regardless. But the original Red Dawn.
I love that. Which VeeFriend needs to be voted in the White House right now in 2024?
I don't have a good answer except for the first character that popped in my head, and I don't know why. But the organized ostrich or the outgoing octopus, maybe you can go like president and VP with that.
Wine, beer, coffee?
It depends on the time of the day. I'm not drinking much alcohol right now, so I'm going to go cold brew for sure.
Bougie hotel or hiking and camping out in the woods?
Oh, camping by far. The hotel will always be there. You need to get out in nature. We go camping every single year for our anniversary, my wife and I with the kids, and I wouldn't trade those moments.
VCon 2024, obviously in LA. It's the last guaranteed one. I think a lot of us assume that there's going to be a 2025. So do you think there's going to be one in 2025? And if so, what city?
Yes, I do believe there is going to be a 2025. I believe, I don't know, maybe I just want it to be for all the other people out there. I think it's going to be international. I also think that there's going to be more than just one big one. I think it's going to somehow be split up into smaller venues or a smaller series of VCon. And so I think it's going to be hitting in different areas, and I think that everyone's going to have their ability to get to them.
Would you rather have a 2-hour group dinner experience with Gary's, you and 9 other people, or a 10-minute one-on-one?
Oh man, 10 minutes of pure anxiety, not knowing what I'm saying, or 20 minutes of at least being fed and having a moment to actually think about what I need to say. I think it has to be the dinner.
Amazing. Which is a great tee up for the last question. If you could ask Gary one question, what would it be?
Is this what you want of us? Is this it? Do we do anything else?
You've
Oh,
never
man.
laughed while asking this question.
I don't know. I really should think about this. I don't have a good question for it. But if I give myself like 15 seconds, and I know this is like rapid fire, this is my nightmare is like answering questions without being able to kind of go off on a tangent with them.
You're a thoughtful guy. Yeah.
That's what it is. I think I would ask something along the lines of, why is it I don't know, I don't even want to ask him this question because I feel like he doesn't deserve this question. That's not even what I wanted to say, but I'm going to say it. And this is exactly what I'd say to him. I'd be like, what the fuck is he saying? But I would say, how am I going to die without regret? I feel like that's like my question, but I feel like I would know his answer and I'd be like, I wanted more than that. Yeah, I think I really need to spend some time thinking about what I would say.
I love that. Ryan, thank you so much for being here. You're the best. I'm so happy we got this time together, and looking forward to seeing you at VCon.
Yeah, dude. I will see you there. Thank you so much for having me on.